This is Truth Claims on Two Films, Christopher Columbus: The Discovery, and 1942, The Conquest of Paradise. As Carly stated in the initial Truth Claims, we're trying to figure out how accurate these two movies are. Christopher Columbus: The Discovery has a lot of visual accuracy. There's not a whole lot wrong with this film, and none of it really blares out at me. They are dressed in things that appear would be common to that era. There's nothing really blatant, and they're all wearing, relatively dirty clothes. They are addressing the nobility about how I'd expect them to. They're a little bit informal when they're talking to them, but they're kissing their hands and they're bowing, and they're making what looks like a normal conversation. The crests of the nobility are all across the grounds of the palace. They're also This is pretty common, I think, because kingdoms want to mark their territory to make sure that no bad guys get into it. Columbus riding what appears to be a fresh horse. Now this strikes me as a little weird because he didn't have a lot of money, and so I don't think he'd be able to buy a real fresh horse. So I'd expect his horse to be a little bit more beaten down. As Carly pointed out, this Christopher Columbus doesn't really look like what we have Christopher Columbus looking like in portraits and paintings of him. It's a little different. He looks a little more the Spanish guy, and he wasn't really even Spanish. He was Genoan. So it looks a little different. As the movie progresses, the Christopher Columbus gets on his ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. And these ships look and operate about how I'd expect them to. The men are doing pretty much what they should. And during the movie, we also see some men get punished, and that's about how I'd expect them to be punished when they're at sea as well. The tools Christopher Columbus is using are also seem accurate. He's using what's called a sextant, and that's used to navigate by the stars. And they had that back then, and it was commonly used. The indigenous people, when Columbus actually gets to the island, are dressed in also what appears to be accurate clothing. They're wearing nothing too sophisticated. It's what they can build from the land, basically the trees. The next movie, 1492, The Conquest of Paradise, they're also wearing what I'd expect to be accurate clothing. Columbus is wearing a little bit more sophisticated clothing, though. It looks a little bit more expensive than what I'd expect him to be able to afford. Again, in this movie, Columbus is talking a little bit too relaxed to the nobility. He is bowing, he is kissing their hands, but there's a little bit too common of banter going back and forth for them to be talking to nobility the way I'd expect. Also in this movie, there's a huge going away parade for Columbus. I don't know that they'd necessarily have this parade. It seems a little bit too extravagant for me. It was a mission that was set up by the kingdom, but that still doesn't warrant a parade, in my opinion. They'd have to have a parade for every ship going to explore new land, and that just doesn't make sense. Again, the ships, when they set sail, the Nina, the Pinta, and Santa Maria, they all look pretty accurate. They depict the ships a little differently in this movie than they do the other one, but they're pretty much the same, and they all pretty much do the same thing. When they finally reach land, they get aboard their landing ships, and these things are covered in lots of flags, and I'd kind of expect that. The Spanish wanted the Spanish and a lot of conquering colonies, conquering entities, like the French, they like to announce their presence and they like to make sure people know who they are. So they always brought a lot of flags with them, and it also helped make them look a little more extravagant. Again, the Indians are dressed in really basic attire. They're wearing what they can make from the land. We see their village in this movie, which again looks pretty basic. It's just made from leaves and timber. The weapons the Indians are also using are pretty primitive, and they're just made from sticks and stones that are sharpened up. The construction of the church that they build seems pretty accurate as well. It's a Spanish church. As mentioned in the movie, it was designed by Leonardo da Vinci. The layout, from what we can see of the town, would be pretty accurate. The church would be the main focus of a colony, and that's what they focused on in this movie. At the end of the movie, the jail and the chains that Columbus is in seem pretty accurate. They were dark dungeons, and they wanted to make sure that you were demoralized. And it appears, although he does get visits from his sons, it appears he is kind of demoralized. Which film was more accurate according to visuals? Well, I think 1492 was a little more accurate. It had a little more detail throughout the movie, which helped me believe that it was a true movie. As for the thematic accuracy, Christopher Columbus, the Discovery, all Christopher Columbus really wanted was greed and to discover new land. He wanted greed because he wanted all the gold and the titles and the riches that he fought so hard to get. But he also kind of wanted to discover new land. He wanted to set out and find the sea, find what was beyond the sea that they didn't know about. Towards the beginning of the movie, he's all about the discovery and good. Towards the end, he turns to the greed and the bad, and it never works out for him quite well in the end. The thematic accuracy of 1492, The Conquest of Paradise, was pretty similar. He had the same problems. He wanted greed. He listed a ton of demands that he forced the nobility to meet. He wasn't going to do the expedition unless they met it. But he also wanted to discover new lands, and he wanted to get his route to Asia. This movie handles them a lot differently. I think they take a little more relaxed approach to it. They kind of depict it as real life instead of a Hollywood film, which helps make the movie a little more enjoyable for me. I think it was pretty close considering all things. They both had pretty much the same storyline. They both had pretty much the same problems. They just went about them different ways. And I think that's why 1492 is a little bit better of a film, because it just depicts it a little better. I think overall, all the accuracies considered, 1492 depicts it a lot better, because it gives us a lot more detail, and we're also able to see a little bit, what I feel is a little bit more realistic version of what Christopher Columbus would have actually been like. As Carly mentioned, we both agree that 1492 was better, and it lived up to a better accuracy of what Christopher Columbus probably was like.